All right. Karibu, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the first episode of the Perfecting Me podcast, hosted by yours truly, me. And I'm just so excited to do this. Let me just say, I'm so grateful for all the help and support that I've had. I've had numerous of people that I've met who have like extended kindness and words and just like tips and things to me during this process, who have encouraged me in wanting to pursue this path that I feel like I'm destined for. And just a little side note, my cat is in the back. Her name is Moshi. She's amazing. She's working on herself too. We go through therapy, but she's back there. And so if you hear any like ruckus or even see her running around, now you know. So, but back to what I was saying. I just like to thank all of my friends who have been tremendous support systems to me and like have supported my journey through and through, have pushed me in times where I didn't want to do it anymore or where I felt discouraged. And to anyone I met who has like boosted my confidence in the works of this journey. And to shout out Dave for the mic, because Dave a real one. Go fuck with Dave. So let's get started. Today's episode is on growth, right? Because my whole topic of this podcast is growth. Everything I want to talk about, I wanted to tie back to growth. And so if you want to grow, this is the place for you. If you don't, it's probably still the place for you, but you don't have to listen. That's okay. But I have a little sheet here to guide me. So bear with me today, as this is my first episode and I'm new to this, but we gonna find our flow and we gonna figure it out. So how I wanted to start this episode was with talking about my own growth journey and like all the things that I've acquired that helped me grow, because I feel like for me to be talking about this, I need to tell y'all what makes me credible, right? And so why not just lay my shit bare? And so I wanted to start with the fact that I was extremely insecure. My entire growth journey, you see, there go that cat I was talking about. My entire growth journey is surrounded by the fact that I suffered from extreme insecurity. I suffered from extreme fear, and I let those things consume me in ways that I look back now and I can't even imagine that I lived that way. You know, like I was so insecure that I deemed myself unlovable, unfuckable. I deemed myself unworthy of a boyfriend. I didn't even like have crushes on boys for real. Like I had one crush that I kept like throughout middle school and up, because I didn't think I was like worthy of better. Girl, can you relax? Thank you. You see that? She want to sit in her tower all day. She want to sit in her tower all day, and then now she want to play. Since when are you a dog? But anyway, I was so insecure, right? Like the fear of rejection consumed my life. I was not comfortable with putting myself out there. In fact, I was so insecure that I purposefully made myself the bid so that I didn't have to be made fun of. You know what I mean? Like it hurt me less when other people made fun of me, and it was just really bad. And then COVID hit, right? And COVID was hard for everybody, but I had lost a relationship at that time. Two relationships that were extremely important to me and that like I put all my value into. And when I lost those relationships, I found myself at like a rock bottom that I like would not wish on anybody. I wouldn't even wish that on my worst enemy. Like I did not value myself at all at that point, because at least before, even though I was insecure, I was still like, I still knew I had like certain standards to like uphold, you know? Like my father raised me to be a girl that doesn't really like let people walk all over her, and my dad is a guy who doesn't allow my mom and my dad, like, you know, shout out to the parents, because they raised me to be an amazing girl. And like as a kid, I used to nag and complain, but I look back now and I often find myself like thinking about the things that my parents have said, because if it wasn't for their strength and for like the mindsets that they had, I'd be so weak. And so I'm so grateful to have been raised by like strong individuals who, like, even if they didn't boost my sense of self, I watched them boost their own. And that was enough to like serve as an example of what I should use as a set of standards for myself, as I got older and was able to understand that. So it started a path in me where I decided I wanted to release my insecurities. Like, I just felt so ugly. And I remembered my sister told me one time about a friend of hers who said she was scared, like scared shitless of fighting. She was scared of people. She hated confrontation. But she knew she was skinny, and she knew she was small, and she knew that she'd get picked on. So what did she do? She faked it, and she pretended to be someone that she wasn't. She pretended to be real rah-rah, like she was real hard and real boss. And because of that, people never fought her. And not only that, but over time, that persona became her. And she became somebody that was like untouchable and like unfuckwittable. And I held on to that so tight. In those like dark 2020 times, I sat in my room and was like, I just have to pretend. I just have to fake it. I just have to fake that I am not insecure. I just have to fake that I love myself. I just have to fake that I think I'm beautiful, because at this rate, I've tried everything else to love myself and nothing else has worked. So what could I lose from pretending, right? Every time I would say ugly things to myself or be rude to myself, I worked really, really hard to counteract those thoughts every time I heard them. So if I wore an outfit and I felt super fat in it, I would force myself to go out, because there's no other way to get through that uncomfortability without just sitting in it. You know what I mean? And through that, forcing myself to wear clothes and forcing myself to do things that I didn't really want to do made life a lot easier for me. I just knew that something had to change, and I am so grateful that I acknowledged that in myself, because that was the first step. Like, being self-aware and being honest with myself allowed for me to open up room for healing. And that's a very important thing, especially when your life is consumed with fear, because fear manifests into so many other things that you should really fear. You should fear anxiety. You should fear overthinking. You should fear depression. Well, you shouldn't, but because they're natural. But you definitely should see how fear perpetuates those things. How fear is something, when you let go of being afraid, you let go of the overthinking, which leads to the anxiety, which leads to the depression, which leads to anger and resentment and regret and all these other like feelings that come from fear, that come from sadness and stem from fear. Jealousy stems from fear. All these things stem from fear. And me working to rid myself of the fear of being seen as ugly, the fear of not being accepted by people and my peers, everything I did in high school was extremely calculated. I was super loved. Like, anyone who knows me can say that I was probably like top 3, like, known in my high school. Honestly, one thing about me that I'll say is that I don't judge, like, at all, unless you're doing something that hurts somebody. Like, I'm not a real like judgmental person, really. And so I was open to all sorts of friendships, all sorts of dynamics, all sorts of people, and I genuinely meant like the relationships that I built. However, I definitely did walk on eggshells through my entire high school career, and a lot of my like motivations in being the person that I was in high school was because I didn't want to be disliked. I didn't want to be ostracized, and I didn't want to be seen as ugly. And I knew that the cards I was dealt, that's the path I was going to, especially with the place that I grew up in. I grew up in a predominantly Hispanic community. And although like the friends that I have are some of the most loving down bitches I've ever had, like, I have those girls to thank as well for why I love myself. Like, my friend Maylin never ever allowed for an opportunity for me to call myself ugly. Whether I believed her or not is, up in the air, but I definitely look back now and thank her for never letting me to continue and stew and sit in those thoughts. And she was very stern about it. Like, one thing is, I'll say I watched her and and I tried to emulate her confidence, because she was one of the most confident people that I knew. And well, she still is, but her confidence was what I tried to emulate when I was in that process of trying to grow out of my insecurities. I feel like I walk in a world where I see fear everywhere now, you know, like, in being able to identify that fear in me, it has opened my eyes to where I see fear in so many places. I see fear in so many things, and I didn't even realize how much that fear controlled, like, my life, not only my life, but like everybody's. I really wanted to put this out there because I thought, you know, I'm still growing. That was only like the start of this journey, and so why not allow for people to grow with me, and we can help each other grow, right? I really am passionate about growth because the person that I am today is completely different from the person I was in high school. You know, the mind is the strongest thing, and it's the one thing that is wholeheartedly yours, right? Like, even your body, you own it, but at the same time, like, there's a social security number tied to that. So do you really, like, but your mind is the only thing that you have, the only thing that cannot be tainted by other people, that you have control over. So it's very important to control it and tell yourself what you know is true. And so that brings me to the next part of my podcast, which is what leads to growth, right? How do we get there? So we started with the first step of telling yourself the truth. And what that means is looking at yourself for all that you are and acknowledging that. Before I was able to get over my insecurities, I had to be honest with myself about what I was. I couldn't say that I wasn't that big, or I couldn't say that I wasn't that dark, because truth is I'm big and truth is I'm dark. But what I needed to tell myself was, yes, you're big, yes, you're dark, but that doesn't mean that you're not beautiful. Just because society has told you that big isn't beautiful, or that black isn't beautiful, or that short hair isn't beautiful, does not mean you have to subscribe to those definitions of beauty. The same way I have the right to choose gray as my favorite color. Every time I tell people my favorite color is gray, they never understand. Either I hear it's a shade and it's not a color, or I hear, what the heck, I've never heard someone have that as their favorite color or whatever. And I'm just like, yo, well, I think it's beautiful. And the same way I could think that and other people will never understand is the same way I'm allowed to think that big is beautiful. The same way I'm allowed to think that dark is beautiful. Everyone else in the world doesn't have to see beauty through the lenses that I see it through. I had to work with telling myself the truths of myself. I have an autoimmune disease, right? And that was something that was really hard for me to come to terms with, because it's a skin disease, and it affects me, like, it affects obviously my image, right? And I had to tell myself that my autoimmune did not define me, because it's the truth. I had to tell myself that the men that turned me down don't define me. And that brings me to the next point. The next point to grow is to let go. You have to let go of the things that you know don't serve you. The mindsets, the ideologies that continue to instill fear and anger in you. I had to let go of ideologies like having a fat ass means I'm better than another bitch, because I don't got a fat ass, let me tell you, but I'm still that bitch. I don't need a fat ass to be that bitch, you know what I'm saying? And like, I had to let go of that ideology. I had to reteach my mind that being skinny doesn't equate to my value, that I have value as a big woman. And I had to stand by that despite encountering people and environments that continuously try to tell me and show me that I'm not valued. And the only way to determine that value is true is if you stand on it. But you can't stand on your values if you don't truly believe in them. You know what I'm saying? So I had to work to unlearn a lot of things. I found myself like realizing that as much as like I fought for colorism, I was a colorist because I still operated off of those biases that everyone else in the world did. I still operated off of those biases of walking in a room and seeing other big girls and saying, dang, at least I'm not the biggest one. You know what I'm saying? And it's so sad that that was my reality because, you know, no one ever wants to go on anybody or hurt anybody's feelings, or you should never have to use somebody else to make yourself feel better. And I'm glad that I realized that. But definitely letting go of ideologies that you've been taught that you know don't serve you, that only perpetuate hate, especially within, are things that you just are going to have to work through your mind to unlearn. And so that brings me to the next part. How do you identify growth, right? So growth is one of those things that you won't really see. Like when you losing weight, I'm losing weight right now, and everyone tells me I look like I'm losing weight. And it wasn't until like just now that I started seeing real differences in within my appearance. And that's because it's one of those things that gradually changes, that isn't meant to be seen like in an instant. You know what I mean? So as far as like identifying growth, I'd say you won't really know until a little later where you realize that you're not doing it. But it's very important to show gratitude, because when you show gratitude, it makes you so much more grateful for all of your small milestones, because essentially everything is growth. If I call myself ugly tomorrow, but I say, oh no, I shouldn't have done that, I shouldn't have called myself ugly, that's growth. Because the last time I called myself ugly, I didn't do that. I allowed myself to think that, and I kept it pushing. So that alone is growth. And then eventually I get to a point where I don't call myself ugly no more. That's another form of growth. Then I get to a point where I'm calling myself beautiful, and therefore more and more and more forms of growth. Different things start to emerge. It's like a flower. You start with the seed, and then it's the stem, and then it's a leaf, and then it's petal by petal. You start to have more and more flowers and more growth, right? And so that's how you identify growth, by the small things. You look at the small things and you're grateful. You show gratitude for the small things that you accomplish. I showed myself so much grace. I always told myself in that journey of loving myself, I always told myself to treat myself how I would my friends. How would I treat my friends if they were going through this type of situation? You need to love yourself the same. You need to, how would you treat your nephew, your niece, your daughter, if they were going through a situation as vulnerable as this? You would give them just as much grace. You would point out to them all of those little milestones and growths, because they're all important and they're very, very valuable to identify. Because when you're grateful, you don't have room for hate in your heart, right? Because like you're showing gratitude, you're thankful. When you're thankful for something, all you feel is like, oh my gosh, like thank you. You know what I mean? So when you're grateful, it's like when people say if you smile when you're crying or when you're mad, you're naturally gonna just start getting happy. And it's true. Like I started trying that, and you can't stay mad. It's so hard, unless, I mean, you can always get back to those feelings if you don't feel them, but you get the essence of it. How do you promote growth? Promoting growth into myself has like one major step, and that is accountability. Taking accountability is so important. I literally was talking about this on my IG story today, and it's so valuable. When you're able to be accountable, even for things that, especially for things that you may not be aware that you did, it shows your ability to be aware that other people have full autonomy over their minds just as you do. In your growth journey, you have to constantly remind yourself of your power and of your control. You have control over your mind, but you don't have control of others, right? And you are entitled to your feelings. You're entitled to your thoughts. When you're mad and you feel like somebody wronged you, nobody can tell you that that person didn't wrong you. But the same way nobody can tell you that person didn't wrong you is the same way you can't tell somebody else that, oh, they didn't wrong you. Whenever someone is coming to tell you how they feel, you have to listen to that. because that's their truth. And all you do is invalidate someone. And when you invalidate people, you show them that they don't have autonomy over their own thoughts, that they don't have autonomy over their own tuition. And that is very detrimental, because who are you to tell me that my soul is wrong? Who are you to tell me that my truth isn't true? The same way I have no right to do that for you. If you want to be heard and you want to be respected and you want to be listened to, you have to be able to accept the truths of others, even if they contradict the truth of your own. I was in a situation with a group of people that I thought I was friends with, where they said that I had done a couple things, and I know my truths. I know I didn't do it. However, if she feels that I did that, then I did that. And all I can do is say, I'm sorry. You know what I mean? In the moment, I argued. But looking back now, I realized that that whole entire situation was pointless. I should have just said sorry. Because at the end of the day, it's not my job to invalidate nobody. It's not my job to be the judge of anybody's truth. But it's my job to be the judge of mine. And so in that moment, to show growth, or at least I didn't show growth in that moment, but now I understand when I find myself in situations similar to that, when people, unless it's like belligerently crazy, you know what I mean? But still, you don't even have to raise your temper. You don't have to lose your temper on things that you know aren't true, because when you're certain in your truth, you know what I'm saying? Like, you will never get mad. If somebody said that was your shoe and you know that's not your shoe, you're gonna say that's not my shoe, and you're gonna walk away. Even if they keep saying that's your shoe, you're not gonna care, because you know it's not your shoe and you don't have to take it. So why would you do the same? I mean, why wouldn't you do the same for a situation where you know that you didn't do that, but someone is saying you didn't? It doesn't matter. Let that be their truth. If they want to think that you did that, if them thinking you did that gives them peace, then let it be. Let go of that control. Let go of control of others and remain aware of the control that you do have. Remain aware of controlling your self-esteem, of controlling your temper, of controlling your mindset, of controlling your what takes up your time, controlling your addictions. You have power and autonomy over yourself. And also, taking accountability allows for you to be aware of projection, because a lot of times people fail to see how they want better for others, that they don't even promote in their own lives. You know what I'm saying? Like, I found myself always like, I've always been that friend that gave advice, right? Like, I'm that girl. I'm Madam Counselor Michelle. Like, I was putting people on. I was doing all that. I'm really good at reading people, all those things. And so in that, I found myself feeling really personal when I was younger to my friends' situations. And like, I felt as though like they had to do this because I could see better for them. I could envision better for them. But as I got older, I realized I had those same issues. I had those same situations. However, I refused to acknowledge them within myself, all while trying to promote and force that growth on my friends. And that was extremely detrimental, because who am I to not only say I have autonomy over someone's actions and thoughts? If someone wants to put themselves in the line of fire, or what I see and view as the line of fire in my eyes, they have all the right to do that. If I love them, I can support them, I can be honest with them, but I never have to force them. And that's what I mean by letting go of control. A lot of people want people to see things and do things as they see and do. But the truth is, everybody has control of themselves, and they have their own lenses, their own perception. So you have to allow for people to live within their truths, even if it doesn't align with you. But what you can do is, if it's something that doesn't align with you to the point where it is affecting you, or it is taking a toll on your mental health, if you can't seem to get it out your mind, then that's how you know it's something you need to rid from you. That's how you know it's something that doesn't promote growth in you, but rather hinder you, because it's a distraction. If you hyper analyze situations, if you're constantly angered because your friend's not leaving a nigga who cheats on her, or you're constantly upset because your friend is spending her money and she shouldn't be spending her money because you know she's broke. You just have to leave people to their own devices. You just have to allow people to learn, especially if you have issues with, accepting compliments, or you have issues with cleaning your room. Like or your temperament. You have things that you have to fix in yourself. So who are you to be telling others that they have to dig in within themselves and heal? I've learned the best way to promote growth in others is to emulate that growth, is to be that growth, is to set an example. And I've found that me standing on my growth journey, not only me being more confident, I've attracted more confident beings, and people treat me completely different. I just started losing weight, but when 2020, by the end of 2020 and from the beginning of 2020, the attention, the respect, the love I got from people was completely different from the love that I was receiving before. And it made me realize that my low vibrations, my insecurity kept me there. My insecurity attracted the attention that I got. My fear attracted the men that I got, And the more that I elevated myself, the more elevated people that I met. And not only that, but those that I really, really loved and those that really valued me grew too. If I could see areas where, I might think that they could grow or whatever, but I would never force that type of growth on anyone. But I naturally started to see those changes in those people, and I started to see how my life mirrored those that were around me. And it's because it's true. Like, the people that you're around, the company that you keep becomes you. That is you. And so if you have other people that are insecure and other people that suffer from like anything, be that example, if not for you, for them, right? Like, if you don't want to be strong, I have a nephew and I love my nephew. I love him to death. And I would never want him to lead his middle school and high school life ever being insecure. So I stand in front of him as a confident person. I stand in front of him and I boost my insecurities, and I stand with my chin up tall, because showing him an example of a secure person makes him more and more secure in himself. And I aim to do the same for my friends. Being around my friends who are insecure, there's never no room for doubt. How you feel is true unless it's not. You know what I mean? Like, if you think you're ugly, that's not true. I mean, if you think you're ugly, then it's true because you think you're ugly. But you are the only one who can change that. You're the only one whose opinion matters. The hardest aspects of growth, it's uncomfortability. The truth is, growth is hard, but growth is so rewarding. It's like delayed gratification, because it's so hard to wait for something, especially when you see it right there in front of you, or of other ways where it seems like it can be easier to achieve. But it feels so good at the end to know that you worked for it when you receive it. It's like working out. It feels so good losing weight and working out in an authentically healthy way compared to all of those unhealthy ways that I tried to lose weight before, as far as like, trigger warning, starving myself or intermediate fasting, any diets that I did that just did not work, or like only drinking water. Like, I did a lot of unhealthy, unrealistic, those diet pills online. None of that shit is real, bro. None of it is real and none of it is healthy. For all of my girlies who want to lose weight, I recommend taking a nutrition class. I took a nutrition class with a nutritionist, and I learned so much about healthy eating habits. I learned so much about myself, and it was in a way that was positive, and like, I really wanted to learn. I learned, and in that, I did my own research. I learned about calorie deficits, but that's not even the point of this episode. So we could talk about weight and all that in another one. The hardest thing surrounding growth that I've found is the uncomfortability. People never want to sit through that uncomfortability. Telling your friends how you feel, being honest with yourself comes with being honest with others, and standing in your truths, right? Like, I already said this how many times? 1,000,000. But what I mean by that is, outside of like my physical truths that I've come to terms with, are my like mental truths, which is like how I value life, how, like, you know, my ideologies that I subscribe to, and all those things, right? I need to surround myself with people that are the same. I need to surround myself with people that I know love how I do. I need to surround myself with people that I know accept love the way that I give it. I need to surround myself with people that I know possess the qualities that I value, and not people that possess the qualities that trigger me, right? And I think we tend to overlook a lot of those things in hopes that the things we like in people override the things that bother us. But the truth is, if something bothers you, it will continue to bother you. You can overlook that tag stuck in your dress as much as you want, but the whole time at the party, every time you try to dance, that motherfucker is itching. And now you got a rash when you go home. You cannot ignore things that trigger you, that trigger anger, that trigger fear, that trigger sadness. And if you don't have the ability to unsubscribe from those things, it's okay. You're just in a place where you're not mentally strong enough to detach from the ideologies that this person has decided to consume. But then you need to be truthful and honest with yourself about what type of people you're going to surround yourself, or what type of conversations need to be had, or what type of moves need to be made. I had to be honest with myself and about the things that I valued. And with allowing myself to be honest in those things, I also had to learn how to be honest with others about the things that I valued. I lost friends by standing on my values. Growing up in an all Hispanic community, y'all know they love to say the N-word. And I'm probably like about to look so dumb, but it's growth, right? I always allowed my friends to say the N-word. It was not anything that we even discussed. I mean, if we're all being real, before TikTok, nobody did. And so it was never anything that I discussed. I had my values. I stood on what I stood on, but I never checked them for saying the N-word, right? But when 2020 came and I realized how strong and important it was to surround myself with people that didn't discredit me and my values, I had to let my friends know. And so I let all my friends know, and only 2 of them were, and these are the 2 that I have now, 3. One of them didn't say it though. She never said it, but these 2, only 2 of them were like, you know what? I understand that this is something that's important to you. I value you, and so I'm going to change. And they did. My friends stopped saying it. They told their girlfriends not to say it. They made sure the people around them didn't say it. And that shows growth. And that's what I mean by that, sitting through that uncomfortability. It was so hard for me to tell my friends that I did not want them to say the N-word, because I had allowed them to say it for so long that I felt scared. I was scared of losing them. I was scared of being invalidated by them. But I knew that I had to sit in that uncomfortability. And if they couldn't get with the program, then they just weren't for me anyway. And that's what you have to understand. Things that are not for you will not work. They won't work. So if it's for you, it will work. Those other friends that I said it to, they didn't stop. And what happened? It didn't work. And what happened now? I look at them and I don't feel as hurt or as lost as I did in the beginning when I cut them off. And this was like one example of many. I cut people off for not valuing me, for not being real friends. I became unafraid of losing friends. That's one thing that people fear so bad. Thank you guys so much for today. And we'll be back with another episode. Kwaheri.